Hello, BookTube. It's Tony here from Lockster Reads. Just a quick update on what I'm going to do a quick review of the second book I finished in August, and then talk briefly about where I am with my other reading things. And I've also added the book to the TBR because you can never have enough books on your TBR because you're never going to read them all because your TBR just gets faffed around all the time. So there you go. Anyway, I finished Larry Niven's Ringworld, which is a science fiction classic from published in 1970, I believe. Yeah, uh, and it's in the classic SF Masterworks series. I This was a reread. Like A Month in the Country. So the first two books I've read this month are both rereads, which is just because I'd started them and I just wanted to finish them. There's no plan in that. It's a very enjoyable book. I'm a big fan when it comes to science fiction fantasy. I think for me, characters. I think for me, the world building is possibly the number one thing that I'm interested in. Then characters, then plot, I suppose, and then dialogue. Um, 3 and 4, 2, 3, and 4 are marriageable, but world building is my favourite thing. I think I like. It doesn't have to have logic even in the world building, but it has to be interesting. I think Larry Niven does a great job with the world building in this. Actually, I'd say the characters and the world building are both excellent. The writing is good, actually, especially for classic science fiction. There are a couple of things that date it in terms of descriptions um, and but apart from that, I think this is an excellent book. It's basically it's set in a unspecified far future where Earth has reached the stars, has met alien beings, has fought wars with an alien species, trades and travels. And the main character is Lewis Wu, who is a 200-year-old human being. He is approached by Nessus, who is a Pearson's puppeteer, which is one of the several alien races we meet in the book. The description of them, they're three-legged, and the legs have hooves on, two-headed, on long, flexible necks, but their brains aren't in their skulls. They're in a hump on their back that sits between the two necks. They're also infamously cowardly, um, but they do a lot of trading, and we find out a lot more about them and their technology as we go through the book. And the Pearson's puppeteers are escaping a catastrophe that will eventually hit the Earth. Basically, the core of the system, the galaxy, has experienced a series of supernova that have had knock-on effects. It's not just one supernova; it's like a whole series of supernovas, and that is leading to basically a wave of radiation and various other things coming through this galaxy. It'll hit Earth in 20,000 years, but the Pearson's puppeteers are fleeing to the edge of known space. But on their way, they've discovered this mysterious object that was obviously artificially made, and which they are afraid of, and they want to put a team of people together to explore it. Lewis Wu is the first one of those people. He also approaches a Kazinti. I'm probably mispronouncing that. This is where sometimes having an audio book would be helpful. Kazinti. It's Kzinti. Called Speaker to Animals. Now, the Kazinti have had 6 wars against humanity. They've lost them all. They are a aggressive, patriarchal species of gigantic cats, effectively, um, and uh, the one that joins the party is called Speaker to Animals, which is meant as an insult. But so he's added. Then the final person added is a woman called Tila Brown, who is human. She's 20, and we find out later that she was chosen. Well, we find out in the book that she was chosen for a very specific reason. That the Pierce's puppeteers believe that humanity has been breeding for luck, and that Tila Brown is exceptionally lucky. That's the one bit in this book that I kind of think is a bit weird. I don't think luck is a genetic trait. I don't think you can breed for luck. But I just went with it as a plot. And basically, they agree. Lewis Wu is having an affair, a relationship with Tila Brown. That 180-year age gap is a bit of a thing. He doesn't initially want her to go because he doesn't think he thinks she hasn't experienced enough of the world, but eventually she comes. They travel, and the Pearson's puppeteers have developed a much better space vehicle than the humanity's got, and the reward for helping them explore this mysterious object is that they will be given the plans for the spaceship, and they can use it to sell. They'll be given the spaceship they're traveling in, and they'll be given the plans, and they'll be able to sell it to whoever they want to. Now, Speaker for Animals tries to steal it, but then Nessus has prepared for that and uses a TASP on him. Now, a TASP is it's like a porno taser, basically. If you get zapped with it, it stimulates the pleasure centres of the brain, and renders you incapable of doing anything. And repeated use of it becomes addictive. And it put Speaker for Animals never tries anything again. Well, almost never tries anything again, because he is him becoming the slave of a herbivore would be the most undignified thing possible for Kazinti. So eventually they come to this object, which turns out to be a gigantic ring around the sun that was built by an unknown species that actually looks called, which we refer to as the engineers. It's post cataclysmic in that something has happened. We discover this over time, and the civilization that built it has sort of has ended, but left lots of remnants, and has become sort of mythological to the survivors, who have sort of regressed to a sort of more primitive existence. Although, and this is an interesting use of sort of space travel, is that there are still people from that ring that didn't know that it had been destroyed because they were far out in space and were coming back, which becomes part of the plot. And effectively, that's the basis of the story, and the rest of it is exploring the ring, trying to solve the mysteries and trying to escape, because they eventually crashed on it. It's very good, very entertaining, very well written. It is part of a series. There are more books. I am loath to read any more of them because of my terrible experience with Rendezvous with Rama's second book, which I disliked intensely. I'm also not entirely sure series where the author had no intention of writing a sequel, but is eventually feels they have to because fans keep asking them about it. It's a good idea. If any of you have read the other follow-up books, I'll be interested to hear what you think. So yeah, so that's Rendezvous. That's not Rendezvous with Maya. That is Ringworld, which yeah, good book, well worth a read. Um, this is the only This is the only Larry Niven book I've ever read. So I might have to look at some other things that he's written. Um, and let me put this somewhere where I can get it out of the way. I'll just leave it there. And then this weekend I've mostly been reading. These are the two books I'm focusing on finishing next because, as I said, I'm focusing on my library reads mostly. So this is the Adonis selected poems. This is really good so far. It's very strange. It's poetry of. He's very influenced by Mallarmé. It's a French name, and I'm going to say it badly. Mallarmé, but also by Arabic poets previous. Um, it's abstract, elusive, but beautifully. There are some beautiful bits of it. It's a terrible thing that I do a lot, which is rip chunks out of poems, where I don't sort of particularly analyse the whole poem, but I take a small chunk of it um, and pull it out. I kept coming across those phrases in here that I constantly thought, "Oh, that would make a great title for a novel or a great title for a book." Yeah, so I've kind of highlighted. I haven't written in this because obviously it's a library book, and I need to. And I found myself rushing it a bit, so I've slowed down. I'm about it's about 400 pages long, and I'm on page 125. So that's that one. Enjoying that though. Glad I picked it up. I can't remember where I heard of this book. I think I saw it on a list of. I did a Google search when I was building my original ridiculous reading list, which at some point I'm going to have to do a video about. I found a list of like a 50 great books of poetry that was I can't remember where I found it, and that was on it. But it's hard. It's not easy to find. It's not in print, I don't think anymore, or at least not. You can get it second hand. I got this from the library, but even then I had to specially, because Acton Library isn't huge, I had to specially order it in. And then the other one that I made a dent in is the English Civil War People's History by Diane Purkis. This is really interesting. There's a lot of, as it says there, it's a people's history. So there's a lot of what she is using is quotes from contemporary letters, pamphlets. The period was full of people writing pamphlets and newsletters and that kind of thing. In the modern world, people would be writing blogs and making YouTube videos. I just finished chapter 7, which actually I would recommend if you want to get an idea of the process of who was involved, why they got involved, and why those decisions weren't entirely like whole classes didn't make the same decisions, and why it's hard to work out what the ordinary person thought because less of their stuff survives, less of their thought process is known. There are some practical things that happen that make you think that certain things were popular or unpopular, but every region is different, every class is different, families are split. Cornwall, for example, was very royalist, and it actually makes a very good point about Cornwall. In the 21st century, it's easy to forget that Cornwall at this point is still a predominantly non-English speaking region of the UK. It is a Celtic kingdom that has been absorbed into England. It rose up in rebellion in the 1540s when they tried to impose the Reformation prayer book on Cornwall in English. They lost, but Purkis makes an interesting point that it might possibly have affected their response to the English Civil War. And she says that some historians have described it as a war of the six peoples: the English, the Irish, the Scottish, the Welsh, the Cornish. Am I missing somebody? English, Scottish, Welsh, Cornish, Irish. The War of the Five Peoples. English. I added an extra people, and actually, I think that's an interesting way of thinking about it. I don't know if it's entirely correct, but it's an interesting, because at this point again, like Wales was almost entirely non-English speaking, and the chapter says a lot of interesting things about how those regions were perceived, how they reacted to the war, and the impending war, and the decisions being made, and how it's not always just religion. There are people have multiple issues. I mean, there's a really good paragraph where she kind of lists all the different reasons why people came to one side or the other. Because sometimes I think very easy to think with English, with the Civil War, that whole groups had the exact same reasons for fighting on one side or the other. And in this book, it makes it clear that that's not the case. So that's what I'm reading. That's my current reading. I've added one book. There is a project. There is a reading thing on T.S. Eliot going on YouTube. If I can remember who the channel, Hannah Reed's had something in her video. I'll put a link down, and then to the original things. There is a set of different books, different poetry section things being read in different weeks. But I've got this, and I thought I'd add this to the list. I have read The Wasteland, and I have read Four Quartets before. So it'll be a reread. But Eliot is readable to a ridiculous degree, because he isn't simple and straightforward. Some people won't like it. I don't want to sell T.S. Eliot. I think I can't do it because I don't know. I don't have the language to persuade you to read it. Except sometimes reading things that aren't easy is a good exercise for your brain. I was thinking about this and thinking about doing a big video on why on reading and what you choose to read, and why it matters or doesn't matter. I don't know if I'll do that, because I'm not a literary snob. I think you should read what the hell you like. But I do think sometimes you need to push your way out of your bubbles, and you never know if you like. For example, I assumed I was going to hate romance novels from my entire life until I actually bothered to sit down and read some properly, and I quite enjoyed them. I think you need to expose yourself to stuff that is not in your comfort zone. I hate that expression, which is why it's good to follow you booktubers who don't just read what you already read. When I first started following people on YouTube, I deliberately picked channels that read stuff that I didn't read, romance, horror. I'm still not a big horror fan. But I still haven't read that much horror. Like I've not read a single Stephen King book, for example. So yeah, I think feel free to. The first week is the one of his shorter poems, which is the Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, and then the following 2 weeks is, I think, The Wasteland, and they're doing Mr. Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats at the end, which isn't in this book. It's only one of the things that is in the read that isn't in this book. I think for whatever reason, Faber felt it wasn't suitable for one of their nice, pretty poetry collections. Sorry, I'm being idiotic there. So there you go. That's where we are, and that's my reading this week so far. It's going very well. I think I am. I don't know if I'm easily pleased, but it's very rare that I find a book that I really don't like. So, like, for example, to some degree. I mean, I love every book I read, but I can get some enjoyment out of most things that I read, even the bad stuff. Which is why, like, my DNFing the second Rama book is something of an unusual experience. But anyway, I've waffled on for 20 minutes now, which wasn't the plan. Have a good last bit of the weekend wherever you are, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye bye.